News headlines today announce a rail strike could result in a damaging economic shock, questioning what will President Joe Biden do. America's freight railroads have already stopped accepting shipments of hazardous and other security-sensitive materials because of the looming threat of a strike Friday. Union Pacific, one of the major national railroads whose operations would be halted by a strike, said the move is meant to protect employees, customers, and the communities we serve, end quote. A statement from the railroad's trade group said they needed to take this step in order to follow federal rules to ensure that no such cargo is left on an unattended train or unsecured train. But the unions representing the members of the train crew threatening to go on strike say the railroad's new freight restrictions are designed to put pressure on Congress to block the unions from walking out. They said the move was completely unnecessary and no more than corporate extortion. The railroads are using shippers, consumers, and supply chain of our nation as pawns in an effort to get our unions to cave into their contract demands. And this was a statement released by the unions. Now, also, our unions will not cave into these scare tactics, and Congress must not cave into what can only be described as corporate terrorism. The statements show the rising stakes in the labor dispute that could lead to the first national railroad strike in 30 years as soon as this Friday. Get ready, folks. About 60,000 union members who work for the railroad are set to go on strike, including the engineers and conductors who make up the two-person crews on each train. Even though 45,000 other union members belong to the unions that have reached tentative deals with the railroads, a strike by engineers and conductors would bring the freight rail system, which carries nearly 30% of the nation's freight, to a grinding halt. It's about the last thing the U.S. economy needs as it struggles to get over several years of supply chain issues. A prolonged strike could mean some empty shelves in stores, temporary closures at factories that don't have the parts they need to operate, and higher prices due to limited availability of various consumer goods. Now, according to Union Pacific, while these actions are necessary, they do not mean a work stoppage is certain. What we want and continue to push for is a prompt resolution that provides historic wage increases to employees and allows the railroads to restore service as soon as possible, preventing further disruption to the struggling supply chain. Now, there could be a major blow to the U.S. economy coming down the line, but we'll just have to wait and see how this one plays out. The freight railroads are preparing for possible strikes as a years-long labor dispute sits at an impasse ahead of a key Friday night deadline. A strike would not only add to the nation's supply chain woes, but throw a monkey wrench into President Biden's plan to tout the nation's economic progress as midterm elections approach. On one side are freight companies like Union Pacific, CSX, and Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway's BNSF Railway. On the other side are labor unions representing around 140,000 workers who are pushing for improvements in wages, working conditions, and time off. And in the middle sits the Biden administration. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh is rearranging his schedule to tend to the talks. And Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is warning that failure would mean a damaging supply shock to the economy. Yellen said during a CNN interview, the White House is closely monitoring the negotiations. Meanwhile, President Biden is said to be monitoring the situation closely. He has long positioned himself as defender of unions, but is facing strong incentives this week to avoid a strike at all costs. A spokesperson for the Department of Labor told Yahoo Finance that a shutdown of our freight rail system is an unacceptable outcome for our economy and the American people, and all parties must work to avoid that. I find this very disturbing and unsettling to know that the railroads are leveraging us, everyone, the American people, our supply chain, our economy, our way of living, our ability to get food and supplies from stores, the necessities we need on a daily basis, as a leverage point and negotiation tactic to force the railroad workers into accepting their contract negotiations. What do you guys think? Comment below and let me know. I want to share with you guys some information that I received from some viewers, one of which is actually a subscriber of the channel and a member in the group, and we're working to grow his YouTube channel. He's a truck driver and a prepper, and he shared some information that I wanted to share with you guys. The railroad strike is in a sense good for trucking. It opens up a ton of freight for us. However, there's no possible way the trucking industry can keep up with the demand. This will cause a massive break in the supply, and many people will not have access to the goods they need or want. In some areas that are struggling already, it could escalate the possibility of some stage of civil unrest. All we can do is hope it doesn't mind past protests. Thank you for pointing me in the good direction. Now, we're going to be anxiously awaiting for Trucking Prepper to provide us with a new video update that he said he's working on today or tonight to bring us some more information, some more boots on the ground intel from a truck driver's perspective, from a prepper's perspective, from someone entrenched in the supply chain and is relying upon and also independent of the railroad, and get his experience and his take of what he's seeing, what he's hearing, what he's anticipating as a result of a possible railroad shutdown. So you guys stay tuned for that. And I'll put a link in the description to his channel. Go check him out. And I hope he gets that video up really soon, because the clock is ticking and Friday will be here before you know it, with reports stating already that railroad companies like Norfolk Southern and BNSF and CSX, they're already starting to put the plan in motion to begin shutting down the railroads. So this ultimately, we could see the impacts and effects of this before a strike even occurs, for the fact that they have to wind things down. They have to ratchet back. Now, I received another email, and the subscriber politely asked that I do not share their name, so I'm not going to be showing this one to you, but I will read it to you. And it says that I'm a person that is very familiar with the railroad. This is all political. And that makes sense, especially in conjunction with what we just read from most recent news articles. And it says that we have lived and seen the things that the railroads are capable of. 40 plus years. They do not care about the people. This is all being done so they don't have to pay back pay to their employees. Believe me, we could write a book on the things that we have been through in 40 years. But as a warning, closing with, it is not like it seems. That is typically the case with most things that are actually in mainstream media, most things that our government and lawmakers and politicians and leaders are a part of. Typically isn't what it seems. All we have is the information that's provided to us, maybe some real boots on the ground intel from folks that are working for these railroad companies or are involved in this dispute with the unions. But even still, you never know. There's always three sides of every story. Your side, their side, and the truth. And if we're not there, we don't know. We can only believe half of what we see and pretty much none of what we hear. But ultimately, we are the ones who are going to feel the pain as a result of a possible railroad shutdown if they can't reach a resolution. We don't know all the ins and outs, but I can say this, I can tell you guys this with confidence, is that I hope that they form a resolution and they can reach an agreement before it's too late.
Today, support for unions in this country is higher than it's been in nearly 60 years. Think about this. You guys know the numbers. Unions have more support today in America in public opinion than any time in 60 years.